Hey everyone, this is Valley Before Victory.
And I'm Adri, and we have Matt as well. So today we're going to be talking about the infamous, clear topic for content creators at this time of the year, which is just bans and discussions. We've been both playing quite a lot of vintage, so we're also going to talk about vintage like restrictions and restrictions, that sort of stuff. And you can also expect a lot more vintage in the future. In fact, in a couple of days, you can see me running Cold Brew on the vintage challenge that just happened on Wednesday. Sorry, Thursday.
Thursday. Um, so I guess we're going to start with this Legacy and then move on from there to Vintage.
Yep.
So I haven't played Legacy a decent bit recently, less than usual, just getting ready for Vintage tournament that we both participated in. Overall, it seems like Reanimator's is coming back with full force. It's definitely taking down a lot of challenges. It's a big part of the meta, and definitely something that could warrant a ban. I mean, the amount of bans this deck has gotten and is still top tier is quite a few.
Yep.
And like, I mean, you can hit Atraxa, you can hit Entomb, you can hit Reanimate, but I feel like the only way to really put this deck to bed and not have to worry about it anymore is Entomb. Because I don't want them to do another like slight ban and then 3 months later we're like, well, are they going to ban this other card that's good in the deck and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the format's just very combo heavy, which is why this deck is so good, because it has the most interaction while also being a quick clock with a combo. Um, I mean, you look at all these combo decks at the moment, the top 10 decks between Painter, Oops, Reanimator, Forge, Cephalid, Sneak and Show, and Red Stompy, which is not a combo deck, but it's kind of in a similar vein where it just tries to throw everything out there
Mm-hmm.
and be a force check. And it just is a very hostile meta to bruise. Delver and Demir Tempo are both surviving well because Delver is very fast deck with a lot of interaction, and Demir just has 12 pieces of interaction for all those combo matches, so they're doing fine.
Yep.
But definitely hard for other decks that might want that one extra turn to exist in the space. And a lot of the time, even if they do, then Nadu decks just kind of eat them alive.
Yep. Yeah. Um, I haven't played as much Legacy either. The same reason as Matt has. But and even less so because I don't usually play the challenges either. But it felt like the format's moving in a direction that is not what I am looking for in the format. And in a way, I feel like, at least for me personally, I'm fine if that's the case. I am just not gonna engage with the format as much. Um, Even in paper, I have significantly stopped going to the LGS when before I was in there. Rain of Snow at any point, Mondays and Fridays, even sometimes Wednesdays, then playing the challenges, like pretty committed to the format. But as it stands right now, it's just not what I'm looking for the meta. Um, I'll talk about this more a little bit in vintage, but it just feels like the extreme nature of how efficient the format has to be, but the tools are only available to certain types of decks. There is very little that an aggro deck can pull out, even though there's like this like Boros or Mardu decks that sometimes do some trophies here or there, but you don't see them in the challenges because of like how much more cutthroat it gets in there. But also just that honestly you don't want to play like a deck like a no force deck against a meta where you can face Upso spells for anywhere from 2 to 5 times, um, and just like basically you get to play for 5 minutes and have to wait for like an hour to just finish the tournament, right? Tempo decks right now are just like you're either playing like a very fast and powerful threat turn one with like a lot of protection, and like thoughts and stuff like that, which is why like blue black tempo is still a deck. You have all of the interaction possible, not only reactively but proactively, and very fast threats that are 1 mana, basically just like Tamio or Metagoyf. And Bowmaster gets the pass because it's a flash creature and it also tags the other half of the format. And if you don't do that, then you just play the any of the broken You either put an Atraxa into play in like a broken way, like Show and Tell, Sneak and Show, Reanimator of all varieties, or you're putting Thassa's Oracle into play in a busted way, which is either, Oops, Breakfast, that sort of stuff. You marginally get some Beanstalk decks, you marginally get some Nado decks, but overall, it feels like the format is just like very, very, very heavily blue-black. Like even Moonstompy is basically extinct. As soon as its biggest prey, which was Eldrazi, fell off the cliff, they haven't seen as much. And it's also not a matter of like how much hate you want to put in, right? Like, because that's one thing I feel that a lot of eternal formats can sometimes like self-stabilize in that way. Reanimator and Oops have very powerful pivot plans, and their broken thing does not require them to go all in for it, right? Like you're not a Doomsday deck where you need to go all in on your combo or things like those. Like, and Doomsday used to be like one of the most scary combo decks because it had one of the most powerful pivot points, right? Like you would full pivot into like Murktide, Barogoyf, Shieldreds, that sort of stuff, and catch someone that wasn't aware. And if they were aware, you could play around it. But Doomsday was kind of like infamous for having that big of a pivot plan. But now all of the combo decks have something similar to that. And
even in their main deck.
Even in the main deck, exactly. Like you can play against a Reanimator deck and not even know that it's Reanimator for, there are blue-black draws that look exactly the same for Reanimator or for Tempo. So yeah, all of that is to say, I would also like Entomb to be banned. I feel like at this point we're just playing with... okay, if I wanted the format to go in the direction that I want it to be, I would ban Entomb. I would also ban just Oops out of everywhere. I would just ban the Informer and the Spy, just all of it out. The fact that someone was pointing out in like an Eternal Turtles video that Hermit Druid was banned for the same reason, and it's a hilariously worse card, like by all metrics. It's green. It needs to stay in play for at least one turn. It needs to tap. It's just like so many things. Just ban it.
Yep.
Those three cards, at least I feel, would make a good way. We can then start talking about the Nadus, the Tamios, maybe the Wandering, that sort of stuff. But maybe that would be way too much, because if you really go Salt the Earth with Entomb, Balustrade, a Spy, and Undercity Informer, that caps the top two decks of the format, pretty much. So it would be a pretty big upset.
Yeah, I think, look, from our last ban video, we said the same things. We wanted the same things gone.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't happen. And I think at this point, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend is, if you don't want to ban these powerful decks, which is perfectly fine, you've got to unban the cards that are powerful in other colors, because it's silly to have so much power in blue-black, basically. A bit of blue-red, but really blue-black is the most played colors and have been for multiple years.
Yeah.
But you got cards like Ragavan that are banned, Astrolabe, Oko, all cards that are incredibly powerful and have earned their spot on the ban list. Dread Arcanist. All of them deserve to be banned. But if we're not going to ban all these powerful cards that are on a similar level, well then why are they banned? We should unban them. And then at least you have broken decks in multiple different colors that can go across and open up the format. If everything's broken, that's fine. But if it's just play blue-black or blue-red, and blue-red is Delver and hope you go fast enough to beat blue-black before Barogoyf takes over, or Sneak and Show in, which is... It's a blue-red deck, but really it's a blue deck that just happens to have one red card in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You could also think of unbanning. I think Oko could be a nice unban.
Yeah, Astrolabe would be great.
Astrolabe could be okay as well. DRS, even just for the memes, although it's a black card, so slotting it in the blue-black.
It won't go in blue-black the same way it would in Bug.
Yeah.
Because you don't get to hit creatures in blue-black. I think it would open up a Bug deck, which would be a new deck to compete with our typical blue-black deck right now.
Yeah. So I guess we can do predictions. Like, what do we think is going to happen?
Honestly, I see something from Oops getting hit, and maybe Atraxa. I think those are going to be my two estimates. Is something from Roops gets hit, maybe a Traxa, and that's about it.
I am going to be very wishful. I think they're just gonna cap, like just annihilate things. I think it's gonna be Entomb and at least one card from like one or either the Spy or the Informer. One of the two. Like also because like I mean I feel like the challenges get enough people like and the very like the grinders seem to be okay with the format as it is. So people are moving in the challenges. But I feel like in paper, I feel like a lot of things are just like slowing down a little bit. It's also worth noting that this is probably the format we're going to have for EW after June. The next ban is end of
We do have
September.
Spider-Man.
True. So we have Spider-Man release, but in terms of bannings, like because if we go to like September 30, EW is October 17, I think, like something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty early in October.
So 2 weeks after, I don't know that they wanna go like, you know what, we're just gonna shake up the format. Now 2 weeks before EW, that'd be crazy. I think with how much people prepare for those things. So if there's a shake up in the format, it has to be now.
I think it would be possible that if there's like a broken Spider-Man card that just
Yeah.
like interacts, maybe we have like a Spider-Man ban, but
Yeah.
I highly doubt it.
But I feel like that would be more like the everyone knows it. But at the same time, we all thought that Frog was that card last year, and
Yeah,
it,
and it
it
stayed.
still stayed. So we'll see. I feel like it has to be Entomb, Spy plus an Informer, and that's about that. I could also see an unrestricted like an unban of Astorape or DRS. We'll see.
Maybe even DHA. I mean, Dreadhorde Arcanist would be perfectly fine in the current meta, in my opinion. The 2 mana 1/3, no ETB, has to swing, and you have to have a graveyard before you can even activate it, and it's bad into Bowmasters a lot of the time.
Yeah. Alright, so those are our picks for bans and unbans. Let's talk about vintage.
Vintage.
Yes. So,
So-
how are you feeling about vintage?
I'm really liking it. I could see no changes, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. I think the big thing on everyone's mind is stock up.
Yeah.
Now, if it gets restricted, I think that's perfectly fine. The card is really good and has seen so much play, and is one of the reasons why Lurrus PO is the best deck. But I wouldn't be surprised if nothing happened, at least for another ban session. It's perfectly fine. Like, there are decks that beat PO. I mean, look at NYIC, the winning decks were both not PO. It was Doomsday versus
Esper.
Esper. I've seen some people talking about wanting to get Lurrus banned to open up the meta, as Lurrus decks are only about 35% of the meta, but it does pigeonhole a lot of decks into why are you ever playing Tinker or any 3 mana card when you could just play Lurrus, and you're probably right 95% of the time.
Yeah.
With the exceptions being like Doomsday, and even Doomsday is starting to see Lurrus play. So it's interesting. If I think anything's going to happen, I think it's going to be stock up restriction.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think the format's fine as it is. It's self-correcting right now. Lurrus PO is starting to lose a lot of their winning percent, going down to around 52% win rate.
Yeah.
And Demir Lurrus is starting to do a good job fighting it, as well as Esper, both of which are hovering at about the same win rate right now.
Yeah. I actually think Esper is the best deck, honestly. I don't think that PO. I mean, PO is very powerful, and it's. But at the same time, if you look at who's been doing good, like Unlucky Monkey basically just was born with this deck, if that makes sense. Like under the arm, like they are playing it to such a level compared to everyone else. That I don't know, like, cause like if it's just like the best, like for me it's still Esper. The one thing that because if you think about it, like, and I've heard Justin from I'm actually one talk about this a lot, and I kind of tend to agree with what he said, which is that Loro's incentivizes you to do good deck building. There is one card in particular that I feel is not talked about as a 2-drop, which is Murktide Regent, and that is a pretty big one that, for me at least, is missing from all of the vintage cards that still follows the same idea of like it's a 2-drop that puts puts the screws on the game, and it just
Yeah.
like a lot of decks just cannot answer it like straight up.
I mean, blue black loses to it.
Yeah,
That's why Doomsday has it in the board.
yeah, Frog exists, which can contest the board a little, and like Vintage is not a format like Legacy where we have so many cantrips that we can easily support so many delve spells. Dimir is already playing Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time, plus exiling cards with the Frog. So you are making a lot of use of the graveyard. But I feel like Murktide would be like the card that I would see maybe popping more. Because I don't see any other like permanent, like maybe Monastery Mentor, Narset, that sort of stuff. But I feel like that is just a much more like big blue decks, which just already don't play Lurrus anyway. So
I think the at least from my perspective, the big deck that would come back and was a big deck before Luris was a blue-white Tinker, which would run like White Bloom Adventurer, as well as it would probably run Stock Up nowadays,
yeah,
Tinker and stuff like that. And that would be a cool way for Control to evolve past Luris. But currently, it's like it's great that you have White Bloom Adventurer and Tinker, but 9 times out of 10, just having Luris and not those cards is better.
yeah. I mean, in Tinker, you already cannot play Lurrus, so you're incentivized to play other things. But yeah, I think Dave Kaplan, when I was talking to him, and I think when in the Eternal Dota speed, I think he also mentioned it. It's like if there's like a restriction, it's Stock Up, and if there's a ban, it's Lurrus. I actually would go the other way. I would think of unrestrictions, especially if you think PO is the thing that's just like breaking things. Because there are a bunch of cards in the ban, like in the restricted list, that were restricted back when Vintage was a mostly spell-based deck, like a spell-based format. You didn't have, like, if you look at all the creatures that are played in, like, non-creature decks, let's say, because the initiative, like, the deck was just made by initiative creatures, but if you think of, like, shops, right, or things like those were the only, like, real creature decks, or dredge, right, where they did not fold to Thorn of Amethyst, Narset, that sort of stuff. And now, I mean, those got banned because the format was mostly spell based, and now or stack based. And now we have so much fight on the ground. Like even a Thundertrap trainer is able to tag an Narset over a couple turns. We have Stock Up that gets around it. You have ways of like not losing to an Narset. Thorn of Amethyst is also less important now. Against a lot of like a lot of decks are just creature based, right? Like, what do you want a Thorn of Amethyst against Initiative for, or like against Dredge? Well, against Dredge maybe, I guess, but like, or against what's his name, Shops, like, or Oath even. Like, it's not not that great. So I would see restrictions here for Thorn, for Narset, even Mentor.
I definitely agree with you on Narset and Mentor, but Thorn I think is a little dangerous. Just because you're getting in the territory of shops coming back in full force. When shops gets Thorn unrestricted, then all of a sudden they have 8 spheres.
Yeah.
Plus Trinisphere.
Plus here, and the Lodestone Golem, so 10.
And so you're at 10 cards that all of a sudden now can just destroy Lurrus decks.
That's fine.
And you have to have like a lot of tech to beat those decks, and I mean maybe that's a good thing to push those Lurrus decks to adapt. I mean they have adapted to pretty much everything at this point.
Yeah.
But it would definitely be a bit risky to start pushing in that direction. Although maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe it's been enough years that it's not a big deal anymore. Who knows?
I don't know if I would cry for the Lurrus decks, and I say that as someone that mostly plays Esper. But I feel like even then, I can just drop a Frog and put all my eggs in that basket. You have the Stone Coil, I guess, to just beat that, but like there's so many things that you have to be drawing into, and double Thorn of Amethyst is gonna be almost impossible to beat. But I don't know, maybe not. I would just say if PO is considered to be like the best and bestest, you could consider Thorn as like a just take it off. But yeah, so predictions on your side, Matt. What do you think is gonna happen?
I mean, I fully agree with Kaplan. I think if it's a ban, it's hilarious. If it's a restriction, it's stock up, but I don't think anything's gonna happen. Um, yeah, I think there'll be no changes.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be no changes either, especially because vintage is a lot better at tagging the best deck. I feel compared to legacy. There are enough tools, not only enough tools, but also good enough draw and tutors and stuff like that for anything that's playing like blue or even splashing demonic tutor is pretty simple as well.
Yep.
Like it's not a big investment. Anything that can like even if you play not like answers that are very specific, you are very likely to find them. Like and you see in a lot of sideboards just like a one-off Thorn of like a Tabernacle, and you don't have like a Silver Scry or a Crop Rotation or anything like that to find it. You're just like drawing into it eventually. So a lot of those I feel like can tag the format well. We're already seeing like Lurrus decks adapting to it. In the NYSE Open, we already saw a couple of Lurrus decks at the top tables playing Flusterstorms in the main deck and moving, like adapting to what the meta was expecting of them, like no basics, dropping the Nihil Spellbomb, dropping the Dress Down, dropping the Time Twister, and playing stock up themselves, even though they're like a worse stock up deck because they don't have as much fast mana. Cards like Stony Silence instead of New Rods to dodge the Flame of Honors, that sort of stuff. Even like Hydroblast, I saw one.
Yep.
It's only to fight the Pyroblast, right? So there's a lot of stuff that can happen. Even like a Jeskai deck of sorts, because PO pivots into kind of like Jeskai control in a way. I'm sure there's like a way you could do like Jeskai control main, and then you can pivot into a combo of some sorts if you want to. I feel like the format is definitely in flux. The last changes were a restriction on Saga and restriction on Beximol, which was a very big change for the format, and it seems to have been adapted very well. And even when I say like, oh, Loros is 30% of the meta, but like half of that is PO, and PO Loros and Esper or Dimir Loros are very different decks. Even Breach is just like completely different. So I feel like that's fine.
You know, I fully agree. And I think also a very important thing is not to just look at win rates, but also look at like what's behind it.
Yeah.
Because Justin, I'm actually level one, had a really good insight of it where he was talking about this pre NYSE, why the deck he picked, and the options he thinks are best. And throughout all of that, Doomsday had the highest win rate at 56% or something like that.
Yeah.
But the reason why decks like Doomsday or like a bunch of these other decks or like the deck you played earlier can do well in Vintage is because it's a lot more about knowing the format and the playing field is a lot more level. Because no matter what you want to do, you either have the Power 9 to help you. If you want to go in artifacts or aggro in that way, you have land that taps for 3 mana. If you want any graveyard synergy, you have a land that draws you 2 cards every turn.
Yeah.
So there's so many ways to level the playing field no matter what strategy you want. And if you really put in the time to be a deck expert and figuring out how your deck interacts in specific matchups, you're going to do well. And so I think the format is really nice in that way that it's very open and that it's a lot more about your play. And it's only really at the top tables where deck decision is going to start impacting you a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But even like Esper, you can end up with a hand where you go turn 1 Lavinia plus Time Walk if you have a land Black Lotus into an Ancestral. And that's near impossible to beat sometimes. Every deck has these nuts draws, and that's the good part of the format.
Yeah, absolutely. Alright, so thank you everyone for watching. Let us know what you think. If you think that this is where you agree, you disagree, there's some card we overlooked, we didn't talk about, or something like that. We'll see you next. You can expect a lot more activity from our side now that NYC is done and our schedules are a little more manageable. We're looking to stream Vintage and Legacy more consistently, as well as putting up more Expansion Series videos this Sunday.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everyone.
But